It's a contentious political issue in South Africa at this time. After years of land reform, most of the farmland still owned by white farmers. The government now considering a constitutional change that would allow it to expropriate land from white farmers without paying for it.
Parliament is here to listen to you.
In town hall meetings such as this, members of parliament have been giving South Africans an opportunity to voice their opinions about the proposed legislation. Today on Talk to Al Jazeera, we sit down with two farmers, Jonas Mokoka and Leon Borcherds, to get their personal views on this difficult subject.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Mokoka, and welcome to Talk to Al Jazeera.
You're welcome.
You have had experience at the land bank in South Africa specifically, and decades ago you made the move to farming. Why?
Farming, for me, that has been in my blood, and it's in the family. And with the challenges of grading farmers in South Africa, I've seen that it's time opportune for us black people to come into farming. And I wanted to make a difference.
One of the easiest way to access farming, I imagine, was through what the government implemented in terms of its land reform program. How did that work for you?
Land reform in terms of redistribution. Sometimes in 2007, I approached the office of the department where I was looking for land. Fortunate enough, I have settled for land in the Vaal. It is a good area because of its rainfall compared to where I was before. Fortunately, the redistribution program, it's somehow helping us. It's good, but there are some flops. So we need, this is a journey, we need to go on and solve these problems.
And what is your agreement with the government? What has it allowed? How is it allowed for successes with regard to your farming?
Yes, our government gave us or gave me a lease of 30-year period, and which is a sufficient period for one to get up and get to be commercialized.
And if you lease the land, you don't own it, are there challenges in terms of securing funding?
You're very, very, very right. The lease agreement, it's limiting us as farmers. We needed to have title deeds. Title deeds will help us with, as we are approaching the banks, to access fund, because the banks are in need of security and collateral. Therefore, it's a disadvantage for farmers to have a 30-year lease program.
What have you done to try and overcome those challenges? You need resources, you need capital to run the farm, to grow your business. What have you done to overcome some of the challenges because of the lack of ownership?
I have approached banks. I've approached agribusinesses. Fortunate enough, through my at the background of my credit record, I managed to secure loans. But the most loans that I've been securing are production loans, because the banks and agribusiness, they want to secure their funds in terms of a long-term or a medium-term loans by way of registering a bond on the farm. Therefore, I have been going on with my production loans.
Now, you are in a position where you've been fortunate enough to get the type of funding that you require, but is this something that isn't as accessible for many black farmers in South Africa? Are there challenges for many other farmers?
Yes, there are many challenges. As you know, we've got different capacities, we've got different experience, and even credit worthiness. It's not all farmers that are getting assistance from agribusinesses. Therefore, it is a time for our government to step in They have stepped in, but it's not enough. During our initial period of lease, there was an agreement that we need to produce a 5-year production plan. But unfortunately, our government only assisted us on the first tranches or the first year. Therefore, it makes life difficult for a farmer because he had planned for 5 years. Now there's no funding or there's no money that could take him through his whole business plan.
Is that one of the major concerns, that while government has to some extent assisted with regard to access to land through land reform and redistribution, is government lacking in terms of how it gives support to farmers? Is there enough support?
There's no enough support so far, as far as we are concerned. We need a thorough, continuous support until a farmer is established. Now, you cannot take a farmer halfway or just introduce him into this wilderness and then leave him out. We need support.
So given some of the challenges that you've experienced, what then are your thoughts on what government is doing around moves to expropriate land from people in South Africa without compensation?
It's causing a big stir and a uncertainty on commercial farmers. And this is also a threat to food security in our country, because most of what we are consuming and food, even export, they come from commercial farming. And if the government is not prepared to boost and help us as black farmers, as upcoming farmers, then we cannot be held at ransom by a group of commercial farmers, currently white commercial farmers. We should be able to feed our nation as Africans, as black people.
The issue of expropriation without compensation is one in South Africa that has become quite polarizing, and one that's also been racialized.
Yes.
Do you see it in that way? Is this an issue around black people, black farmers, against white farmers? Is that the simplistic approach, or is there more to it for you?
I support land expropriation, but on specific issues or on specific land. We've got land that can be expropriated in terms of housing, in terms of industries and infrastructure also. Not a blanket cover that every farmer will be, his farm is subject to expropriation. So that fear must be diminished, and clarity must be given to all farmers and commercial and upcoming farmers that the government is not aiming at taking farms and grabbing the farms. So the farmers need to be assured, and if you assure them, they will assure the government, because it's a responsibility of government to feed the nation. Therefore, we need to go back into the land and work, and government must support us.
Do you have any concern around what white farmers are perhaps calling a targeted approach to land reform, that they stand to lose, and this is also around skills, their contribution to the economy, and that they feel victimized as white people in South Africa?
This is the time where white commercial farmers must come on board. They shouldn't be like a species that is endangered. They must be part of the whole land reform, and the mindset need to change. This is our country, we are living here, all of us. We must pull together and then find the solution to the whole thing.
Leon Borchers runs a farm that has been in his family's name since 1948.
Land reform, access to land and land ownership in South Africa are things that the government, that South Africans are trying to navigate through. Do you believe that land reform should take place, in that the majority of commercial farming land is in the hands of a white minority population?
Definitely, that is a fact. We all know that. what is also a fact that the white farming community is aging rapidly. I think the average farmer today in South Africa is just over 60 years, whether it's 62, 63, I don't know. So we need new entrants into this market. We need entrants, obviously, of black farmers. We never disputed that, and I think it's very important. We also need new young white farmers, part and parcel. The main thing that I foresee, and there's a major problem for ourselves in organised agriculture, is the way of the approach that the government has had over time. We don't think it's been done very professional. There's a lot of scope for improvement, and we as organised agriculture would really like to help the government in this. There's a lot of challenges, and we can chat about it the whole day. But I think the government has not made it such a priority in their plans, and there's also been a lot of corruption, that a lot of the money has disappeared that it was supposed to get to the farm and the ground, and that has never happened.
What is it about land expropriation without compensation that has been promised? What is it about that you don't agree with?
I agree with it. The only thing, the way they've done it, it creates policy uncertainty, and that has affected the value of land. And I would say 90% or 95% of farmers in South Africa, as land is bonded to the banks who you borrow money from. So it affects us negatively because we've got policy uncertainty. Banks are unwilling to borrow farmers' land because obviously the risk is increased, but so is the farmers' risk increased. So, and that has had a negative effect in the end of the day, that a lot of farmers have stopped expanding. If I know I'm going to be expropriated tomorrow, I won't invest $1 million or $2 million or $3 million. And millions, farmers spend a lot of money, had spent a lot of money in the past in investments, and that has come down rapidly and severely. So the investment into, and even the figures from the Department of Statistics has shown that farmers have stopped investing in their farms. And when you actually stop expanding at the end of the day, you're actually moving backwards.
Are you worried that your land will be expropriated?
The ANC says that commercial farmers where there's action will not be expropriated. I don't believe a politician, so I'm worried. There's nobody's going to give me that certainty, because some politician can say that today, next year or 2, 3, 4, 5 years they can do exactly the opposite. So that is uncertainty. If they say we will not expropriate without compensation, that is bad, because that affects the collateral value of my land or any farmer's land.
Do you think that the government has perhaps miscalculated when approaching the issue of land reform? Do you think that the government hasn't looked at this adequately in terms of how it will impact the agriculture industry and vice versa?
Definitely, they've failed in doing that in the end of the day. If you take, we all on the countryside, in platteland as they call it, we're all dependent on a small town like Marble Hall or Nylstroom or Dimole. That is severely affected by the farming. It's a farming town. So the farmers and the farm workers don't get decent incomes. They don't spend that kind of money there. But now we pay rates and taxes, we don't get anything back for it. We don't get, the roads are not fixed, the clinics are not done, our people are battling to get decent medical attention, which they used to have in a few years ago. So the government has failed in many aspects as far as that is concerned. And I don't know what they're going to do to turn this around at the end of the day, because if you've got no water in a town, you've got no electricity, the sewage is a problem, where do you go from there? And so we've got challenges that we have to address urgently.
So you're saying the government's already failed in certain areas of service delivery, and this possibly could be compounded by land expropriation. How do you think the government should be going about it, land reform?
I think they should involve the private sector, and I'm talking about commercial farmers, more in this. In the Chapter 6 plan of the government's plan for agriculture, it's a very good plan, we think. It's a plan where me or I as a commercial farmer will partner up with some black farmer. We buy another farm, He gets his interest subsidized by the government. There are many institutions that can borrow him the money. If the land bank, for instance, can come on board, subsidize his interest, and so the commercial farmer can transfer knowledge to this new upcoming black farmer. Whether it's only one single farmer, or it's a trust of black farmers, or a co-op. I personally think the co-op model is a good model that can work well in South Africa. But government needs to come to the party and create a platform where business can function and where business can prosper at the end of the day. If the government, and I personally think that is government's purpose, create the environment that is conducive for business, the private sector will create the business. Government can't create business. They can create a platform for us to do business.
Do you think there's perhaps a lack of understanding or a certain naivety around what access to land will mean for South Africans across the board? Do you think government has spelt this out well enough, or there's a lot of confusion?
There's a lot of studies being done about do the people that gets expropriation or they apply for the land claim on a farm, they don't want the farms, they want the money. Now we can debate that the whole day. Not everybody wants to become a train driver, not everybody wants to become a lawyer, not everybody wants to become an industrialist or something like that. We in South Africa need jobs, and that's in the end of the day. We need jobs, we need schools for our people. Create jobs. That is our main thing in South Africa. If we don't start creating jobs, so the government must induce commercial people, whether it's black or white, this is not a race thing. It's induce business to create jobs, to employ people, train them. Train them, yes, please. We need a lot of trained people, but they're not coming through the system. That is what we're asking for. There's a lot of potential, and our labor is good. They just need to be trained at the end of the day.
Do you believe that this issue of land reform and land expropriation without compensation specifically, do you believe that it's been racialized?
No, I don't think it's been racialized. I think it's created expectations for people. It's not necessarily a race thing, but it's become a political ball that the ANC is playing. And I don't think they've made very serious effort to really make this work. You get the idea that they never had the intention for the farming plans to work at the end of the day. It's a political ball they're using and playing. And whenever there's an election, this becomes a hot topic again. Then they open the land claims. They haven't even finished the previous land claims. And we all know what they say, how long it's going to take to finish off. I think it's 35 years, the existing land claims. Now they want to open it for the next. A lot of people don't want to farm. They need the money. They want the money. And if they offered the option, they say, well, I'll rather take the money. People don't know how to farm. Train the people. Help us. Get extension officers. The white commercial farmer is more than happy to help the government in this. But create the platforms. There's a lot of plans, but politics involved every time, and we never get anywhere.
You mentioned the private sector and the role it could play. Do you believe the farming community, which by and large is a white community, do you believe that the existing farming community with generations of knowledge has a role to play in terms of developing the agricultural sector and transferring skills? Yeah,
definitely. And we're willing. I've got 3 black neighbors joining our farm. And I can help them. But they haven't got the skills. They haven't got the skills. I'm prepared to give them the skills, but they haven't got the finances. They don't get loans from the banks, and that's a long topic. They don't get loans from the banks. He has to dip his cattle this week. Now he has to apply for a loan. It takes him 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and there are no packages in place either by the financing companies or whoever, or the co-ops or whatever, because they need collateral. And nobody's going to borrow you money if you haven't got collateral. And that's where we say farms are being expropriated. But it doesn't belong, the title deed does not get to the black man at the end of the day. And that is, I won't say it's the only problem, but that's one of the major problems that nobody will even think of financing you if you haven't got some form of security. Now we're talking of crop finances or There's a lot of financing, and Agbiz and those people and the co-ops are playing major roles. In other words, they've got take-off agreements and things like that. But at the end of the day, somebody has to finance that. And that is our challenge at the end of the day.
Leon, given everything that you've mentioned and some of the uncertainty, at the end of the day, where does it leave you? Where do you think your future is with regard to land in South Africa and farming that your family's been doing for generations?
There's a lot of potential, but let's identify the correct people to get a farm. Let's make it from easy to get access to capital. Let's subsidize his interest. In the 48s, 50s, that's how Land Bank and the Credit Board worked. They subsidized the people's interest rate. Soft loans over 40, 50 years, that can be done today still. That model still stands. And I'm very optimistic if we only get the political will to make this thing work in the end of the day. There's a lot of scope.
The biggest issues is that around the actual ownership, as you've said. It doesn't appear to be clear through expropriation if the recipients of that would actually own the land, essentially taking them back to square one, because they then don't have the security around their land to access finance, but also in terms of their futures. That's the position that you're in now, that once your lease expires, you don't know what happens next.
It is true, because we can't even plan a succession. We're staying on the farms, we don't know what is the future. And you cannot, age is catching up with us. All these farmers, most of the farmers on state lands are aged farmers. They are over 55, 60 years of age. And who can now, at this point in time, at the age of 60, give you a loan of 20 years, period, to pay? Therefore, I believe in government developing an in-house model of funding these farms, and we get title deeds thereof.
Do you believe in any way there's a lack of understanding with regard to the importance of land for South Africans, for black South Africans specifically, who didn't have that access, where there have been great injustices? Do you think that there's a lack of understanding around the importance of ownership?
Without land, you are nobody. It is very, very much important that people or farmers must have access to land. Ownership of land is important. It gives us a sense of security and patriotism for our land. The country needs us. If you can look back into the history of white commercial farmers, they are now aging. There need to be a crop of young men who must come and take over. We are prepared as Africans to take over the land and work on it. Nevertheless, we are expecting some assistance, like the skills that they've got, the experience in the family. They must be willing to let go and then empower us so that we can take it forward.
Where do you see black farmers, black landowners going in generations to come?
No, the future is bright for us. You can see yourself, I'm one of those farmers. But unfortunately, I cannot take this farm and make a legacy for my children. That's where the issue of title deeds and ownership is very important. We need to transfer this land to our children so that they can continue and take the baton forward.
Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.